Hello everyone, welcome to another video tutorial on the Code Angle YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll be using Angular 16 and Supabase to create an authentication application. So as we all know, Angular has been making lots of changes to the framework. So I thought, why not integrate it with Supabase? So if you are not aware of what Supabase is all about, Supabase is an open source Firebase alternative for building secure and performant Postgres backends with minimal configuration. So we'll be using Firebase for our backend service, while Angular 16 will be used for the front end of this application. A few things you should expect to learn in this tutorial is how to use ChatGPT to generate a design interface. That is, every component we generate, the design we created through the use of ChatGPT will also create lazy-loaded routes in Angular 16. In case you are not aware, Angular has taken a much more functional approach to routing. So I'll show you how you can create lazy-loaded routes in Angular 16, and then we will integrate the newly created provide HTTP client in Angular 16. That is, when we create our Angular service, instead of making use of the HTTP client module, because our application is going to be moduleless, we'll make use of the provide HTTP client. Then we're going to make use of reactive forms also in Angular 16. So I'll show you how you can create reactive form validations for our form authentication. And lastly, you should also expect to learn how to integrate Supabase into an Angular 16 project. So if you are new to this channel, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so the YouTube algorithm can push our videos to people out there who are not aware it exists. So without wasting much time, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is to generate or create a new Angular project. This project is going to be a standalone project. So to create a standalone project in Angular, let's run the following command. You can just run ng new, then the name of the project, I can just call this Supabae Auth, and then give it a standalone flag. So with this, we'll be able to generate a new Angular project with a standalone configuration. And as you can see, we get asked the usual prompt messages. Would you like to have routing added to this project? The answer is yes, we would like to have routing, and then we'll choose CSS for our styling. So a new standalone component, or rather a new standalone project, is going to be generated for us. As you can see, the configuration for our new project has been complete, so we can now move into the directory of that project by running the cd command in the terminal. So I can just say cd, then the name of our project, which I call Supabae Auth, I think. Then I can open it up in Visual Studio Code, and then we can move on from there. So now that Visual Studio Code is open, I need to expand some of the text. So I'm going to increase the fonts of Visual Studio Code so you can see the code more clearly. So I'm going to open the src directory and then the app directory. As you can see, we just have the normal boilerplate code generated for us in a new Angular project, the app components, config file, the app route files, just the basic templates we need. So the next step I'm going to take is to create all the needed components for this project. So we need the login components, the register components, the home component, which is also going to be the landing page. Then we need the dashboard component, and then the navbar component. So quickly, I'm going to open the terminal once again. I'm going to clear everything we have right here, and then I'm going to generate these 5 components. So the first one I'm going to create is the login component. In fact, I'm going to create everything at once. So how do I do that? I can just run ng generate components, and then it's going to be inside of a components folder, and then I'm going to call the first component login. So ng generate component, the first C stands for components, and then this component is the folder where the login component is going to be generated. So I'm just going to add the ant command, and then I'm going to run ng generate component, and then still inside the components directory, I'm going to generate the register components, and then same command for the home component. So ng generate components, then we have components /home, and then we run another command, ng generate components, then components /dashboard, and then finally we can generate the last component, which is going to be called navbar. So ng generate components nav bar. I think this is all the components we need for this project. So I'm just going to press enter and all 5 components is going to get generated for us. As you can see, all 5 components has been generated. Beautiful. So I head back to the Visual Studio Code and I expand the components folder. As you can see, we have the dashboard, the home, login, navbar, and register components. So the next step I'm going to take is to generate the designs for these components. Like I said, I won't be creating the design on my end. I'm going to rely on ChatGPT so to create the designs for us. So what I'm going to do is just to go to the ChatGPT website. So I'm just going to say chat.openai.com. I think that's the URL to navigate to ChatGPT. So if you don't have a ChatGPT account, you can go ahead and create a new account right there. So what I'm going to do is to create a new chat once I already have an account. So I can just proceed to ask ChatGPT to do what I want it to do. So the first design I want is the register components. So I'm going to say create a simple design for a login page with email and password input fields. So I think that's all I need to tell ChatGPT to do. Let's see what it comes up with. So as you can see, this is the design ChatGPT came up for us. It has a form in the HTML that contains the input type of email, input type of password, and then the submit button. So, and this is the styling. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the CSS. So I'm going to copy from this container right here. I'm going to grab everything. So I'm going to copy that and then I'm going to edge straight to the, probably we can just go to the register component and then I'm going to paste this in the register component.css. So we have that, and then I'm going to copy the HTML as well. So I'm just going to grab this div right here. So I'm going to copy that, head back to my Visual Studio Code and then open the register component.html and then paste it right there. So in the heading, I can just say have an heading of h2, and within the h2 heading I can just say register or registration page. Let's just say registration page. So next up is for me to change this button from login to register. So it's gonna be register button, and then I'm gonna copy everything right here. Okay, I'm gonna change this login to register as well. So I'm gonna have register, and then I'm gonna copy everything right here and then head to the login component, paste it right in, and then everything that has login, everything that has register, I'm gonna change to login. So this is our login page. So I'm gonna change registration page to login page. I think that's all, and we need to copy the CSS as well. So I'm going to open the login CSS page and then I'm going to paste in the CSS design. I'm going to save everything we've done so far and then close the tabs. So before I proceed, I'm going to head to the style.css file to just configure our global styles. That is, I'm going to add a body style which is going to apply to every component. So I'm going to give it a margin of 0 and then a padding of 0, as well as box sizing of border box. So I'm going to save that. So we've been able to generate the design for the register and login page. So the next design we need to generate is the navbar component. So I'm just going to say generate a simple navbar with register and login text. So let's see what ChatGPT comes up with for us. So it comes up with a navbar with register and login. So I'm going to copy the CSS for that. So I'm going to copy the navbar. So head straight to our Visual Studio Code, open up the navbar component, the CSS file. I'm going to save that. And then for the navbar HTML, I'm going to open that up and then grab the simple design ChatGPT came up for us. Look, it's just a div and a UL tag, very simple design, so we don't need more than that. This is not a major project, so we are done with that. So the next design we need is the home, that is a landing page. So I'm going to tell ChatGPT to generate a landing page design for us. So create a landing page using HTML and CSS. So let's see what ChatGPT comes up with. So as you can see, ChatGPT has come up with a simple design for our landing page. So I'm gonna grab the CSS as well. So we have this arrow class, and I'm gonna keep copying it. I'm gonna copy the whole of the CSS and then head straight to our components, and then open up our home components, and then paste in the styling and open up the HTML as well. So I'm gonna grab the design ChatGPT came up for us for the HTML, and then I'm gonna paste it right there. So I'm gonna save, and then I'm gonna close the tabs. I think the final thing we need ChatGPT to generate for us is the dashboard. We don't have a dashboard design, so we need a simple dashboard design. So I'm gonna say generate a simple dashboard design using HTML and CSS. So let's wait for ChatGPT to generate this for us. So we may need to tweak some of these. As you can see in the dashboard, we have a list containing dashboard orders, customers. I guess I should have told it what we want it to show for us. But still, let's just copy the styling. We can still make the configurations once we route to this component. So for now, let's just copy everything ChatGPT generated for us, and then head straight to the dashboard component CSS, paste all the styling, save, head to the component HTML for the dashboard. So I'm gonna grab everything right here. Our dashboard has a sidebar, so I'm interested to see how that looks like. So I haven't seen this before. I haven't worked with this before, with this design before. So it's just something out of the box. So we are learning together. ChatGPT is like a assistant for this project. So I think that's all we need to do. We've generated all the designs thanks to ChatGPT. So I'm going to close the ChatGPT tab in Chrome, and then the next step is for us to configure our routes. Like, we want to see all the designs, and for us to see the designs, of course, we need routing to do that. So I'm going to head straight to the routes file. That's app.routes.cs file. As you can see, we have an import already that imports route from @Angular router, and we have a route array right here. So inside this array, I'm going to create the paths to the route. So each route is going to be lazy loaded, which takes a functional approach. So the first route we need to create is the login route. So I'm just going to open a bracket, and within this bracket, I'm going to have a path. So this part is going to be the name of the route we want to create. So this is going to be the login route. So I'm just going to say login and then comma. Within this bracket, I'm going to call the load component, because this is a load. This is a lazy loaded route. So next up, I'm going to create an arrow function and then call the import keyword, and then we need to import the path to the route. So to do that, I'm just going to say ./ within the components directory, because the login is located in the component directory. So I'm going to say components / login / login.component, because that's the name of our file, and then it returns a promise. So we're going to make use of .then, and then so I'm going to say com, and then call the arrow. I'm going to say com.login components. So that's our first lazy loaded route created for us. So this is the syntax to create that. Just to confirm, the component folder doesn't have an S, so it's / component / login / login.component. So I'm just going to duplicate this 2 more times, because I want the register components to be lazy loaded as well. So I'm just going to say the path is going to be register, and then the path here is going to be register. So it's going to be / component / register / register.component, and then this is going to be a register component. So I'm going to say register component. So that's all we need to do there. Then the next lazy loaded route we want to create is called the dashboard. So we want the dashboard to be lazy loaded as well. So I'm going to say path is dashboard, and then / dashboard, and then we're going to change the login component here to dashboard components. Awesome. So I want us to create 2 more parts. The next one is going to be the home part. I don't want the home part to be loaded, so I'm just going to do the normal normal routing configurations, which is going to be parts home, and then I'm going to call components home component, which we need to import because this is not a lazy loaded component. So we need to import the home component. And for some reason, IntelliSense is not helping us do that. So I might need to import it manually. And before I do that, we need to set the wildcard parts. That is the part where if any part does not match a specific part, we get redirected to the home part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the part keyword, and then within that I'm going to create a white flag using double asterisk. So I'm going to redirect to the home component, and then I'm going to set part match to full because without this the routing would not work. So quickly let me go above right here and then import the home components. So I'm gonna import home component from ./components /home/home dot component. So I'm gonna save, and with this the configuration for our route is complete. Before we go, let me just quickly correct this. The dashboard part is not spelled correctly, so I just corrected that now, and with that we can now move to the next step of this tutorial. So I'm gonna open the main.ts file. So here is where we complete the configuration of our parts. So this is where we bring in the routing file and it gets configured in a providers array. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is to get rid of some imports. I think the first one I'm going to get rid of is this app config file. I don't think we need it. And then we can now begin our configuration. So within this bootstrap application, I'm going to open a bracket, and within this brackets we will have our providers. So I'm going to say providers, and then I'm going to create an array. So I'm going to import the provide router. So quickly, let's just type in the provide router, which we need to import. As you can see, it's imported for us above, and we're going to call the routes array right here. So we need to import the routes array from app.routes file. So what do I mean by this? When you check the app.routes file, the variable we created, which is routes, is what we are importing in the main.cs file. This allows our routing to be integrated into the base of the application. This is a new format in Angular 16 rather. So this is all you need to do. So I'm going to save, and then I'm going to head straight to the app component.html file. This is like the base of our application. So this is where we're going to configure the navbar. So right here I'm going to bring in the navbar tag so that the navbar could be reflected throughout the design of the application. So I need to grab the selector, which is app-navbar, and then import the tag right here called the selector. I need to inject it into the app components ts file because now we are dealing with a standalone component. So I need to import the navbar component. So let me just grab this navbar and then head straight to app component.ts file so that the error is going to be fixed. All I need to do is just to import the navbar components and we're good to go. As you can see, the error disappears, and then I'm going to close the app component.ts file as well as the app navbar component.ts file. Then before I compile this application, I'm going to import the router outlet. Without this, our component is not going to have routing integrated. So I'm going to save. I believe I've saved everything I've created so far. So I'm going to open the terminal, clear up the terminal, and then run ng-serve and wait for our project to compile. Now that our project has compiled, we have an error. As you can see right here, it says it can't resolve background-image.jpg, which is found in home component.css. So I'm going to head straight to home component.css file. So we have it right here. So I think this is because we don't have any background image set. So this is not included in the application. So I'm just going to get rid of this particular CSS attribute. So I'm going to save, and the project should recompile, and hopefully this compilation should be successful. So I'm just going to run localhost for a 200. As you can see, this is the landing page of our application. This is the navbar. We have a login button and a register button. This doesn't look too pretty. And then this is the landing page. So if we want to see the login, for now we haven't configured the routes, that is the login and register route. So for me to go there, I need to do /login. This is our form. Oh, our form is not too bad. So let me check the register form. So I'm going to navigate to the register page. So we have a login form and then a register form. So I'm going to get rid of this registration page we have right here. I think it's not needed. It makes the design not too neat. So I'm going to head to the login and register components. So in the login component, right on top of here, I'm going to get rid of the login page text. And then in the register component as well, I'm going to get rid of the register page text. So I'm going to save that and let's check it out. This looks much more better. So to confirm if our register components and our login components are lazy loaded, when you check the compiler, you can see this text right here. It says lazy chunk files. So it says register components yes and then login components yes. So that means both components are lazy loaded. So next up, we can now start working with our service in Angular. So I need to generate a new service file. So to do that, I need to stop the terminal, of course, and then I'm gonna run ng generate service, and it's gonna be inside of a service folder, and I'm gonna call it super because we're using Supabase to create the backend authentication for these applications. I'm going to create a new service, and as you can see, the service is generated for us, so I can just open Visual Studio Code. As you can see right here, we have a new service file, which is perfect. So the next step is to integrate the provideHttpClient in Angular. To do that, we need to head straight to the main.ts file. So this is where we need to configure this, just like we configured our routes here. So in the main.ts file, we need to import provide HTTP client. So after the provide router, I'm going to add a comma and I'm going to open up an array and I'm going to say provide HTTP client, which we need to import, and it's going to have a parenthesis. So we need to import it, like I said. So provide HTTP client. Well, IntelliSense is not working, so I need to import it manually. So I'm going to say import provide HTTP client from at Angular. It's going to come from the Angular common HTTP. So I'm going to say at Angular /common /HTTP. So with that, our service has been configured, and then we can create a new Supabase project, because now we need to start creating the functions in our super service file, but we need some things from Supabase to do that, which is our backend service. So if you don't have a Supabase account, make sure to go create one. I already create a new Supabase account. So once you create an account, you need to create an organization. So I already did that. My organization is called the Sugar 10, and you need to create a new project. So with the new project, you can get an API key as well as the URL to the backend service, because we're going to have a URL we need to connect to. So quickly, I'm going to click on new projects, and it's going to ask which organization do you want to create. A new organization, or you want to select your current organization. I think I'm going to go with my current organization, and then a form is going to pop up. As you can see, this form shows our organization, and then we have input fields such as the project's name, the database password, and then the region, as well as the pricing plan. We're going with the free plan because this is just a side project. We don't expect any user for this project, so a free project is ideal. So the name of this project, I'm going to call it ng-super-auth, and then the password needs to be something strong, something very unique, or else it won't allow you to create a project. For instance, if I just type in 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, is to say this is a top 10 common password, you need a stronger password, and then the create new projects button will disabled. I think this is a very good feature, so it makes sure it ensures you use a very strong password. So I'm going to use a unique password. Probably I'll just use Bitwarden to generate a new password. Bitwarden is a password management application I use to manage my password. So I'm just going to paste in the password. You can see the password is set to be strong, and now the create new project is enabled. So I'm going to select a region. I think I'll pick a region in Europe, since Europe is closer to Africa. I'm creating this project from Africa. Okay, we're gonna go with London. I think we have the same time zone with London, and then the server should be closer to Africa, makes it faster. So I'm going to create a new project, and then let's wait for that to get configured. As you can see, it's retrieving the API keys and it's generated for us. So the two things we need is this public API key as well as the URL for the database. It's like a RESTful endpoint for querying and managing our database. So it's a very, very important URL. To use this in our project, we need an environment folder that contains the environment file for development and the environment file for production. So to create the environment folder in previous versions of Angular, it comes by default within the project configuration. You would have seen the environment folder, but in Angular 16 you need to generate it yourself. So I'm going to head to the terminal and I'm going to generate a new environment folder by running the command ng generate environment. As you can see, it creates two files for us, the environment.cs file and the environment.development.cs file, which is what we're going to use, the environment.development.cs file. Within these objects, I'm going to create a variable called production, and I'm going to set it to false. And then next up, I'm going to create a Supabase key object. And then I'm going to have a URL within the object, which is going to contain the URL from our database as well as the key, the API key. So those are the two important things we need. So I'm going to head back to the Supabase dashboard. The first one I'm going to copy is the API keys, which is public, as you can see right here. And then I'm going to open our project environment development file and I'm going to paste in the API key. Then I'm going to grab the URL, which we have right here. I'm going to paste it within this URL key. So I'm going to save, and that's all we need to do in the environment.development.cs file. So if you want to push to probably a version control system like Git, you can just include it in your .ignore file so your API keys don't get exposed and your app doesn't get compromised. So the next step for us now is to install Supabase. Of course, without installing Supabase, how are we going to make use of Supabase? There's no way we can make use of Supabase. So quickly, I'm going to install Supabase by heading to the terminal and running the command npm install at Supabase /Supabase -js. So this is gonna install Supabase into our project. While Supabase is installing, I can as well add the validation for the login and register forms. So I'm gonna head to the browser, and for our project, which is right here, we can just add the validation for both login and register. So I'm gonna head straight to, let's start off with register. So to create validation for register, so we need to import some important modules in Angular. The first one is the reactive form module. We need the form builder, we need the form group, as well as the validators. So quickly, I'm going to head straight to the imports array we have right here, and then I'm going to type in reactive forms module, and then we need to import it. So I'm going to say import reactive form modules from @Angular forms. So what I also need here is the form builder. So I'm going to import the form builder as well as form group, and then finally I need the validators. This is cool. Now we need to create an instance of the form group. So right below the export class, I'm going to create a register form variable. So I'm going to say register form, and then I'm going to assign it to the form group. It needs an initializer to get rid of the error, so I'm going to put an exclamation mark right there. So we need the constructor to proceed with this. So I'm going to create a constructor. So inside this constructor, I'm going to import the form builder. With this, we can now reference the register form within this construct. What do I mean by this? I can just say this dot register form is equals to this dot form builder. We need the form builder dot group. I need to configure the email as well as the password. So for the email, I need to create the validation. So I'm just gonna say email form builder dot control, then validators dot require. I'm going to say the validators dot require as well as the validators dot email, and then I'm going to say the main length as well. So I'm going to say validators dot main length, I'm going to set that to 5. So I believe our email should be at least 5 characters. So I think that's all we need to do for the email. Then for the password, so I'm going to say form builder dot control, and then we're going to have the validators dot required as well, and then validators dot main length, which is going to be 7. The password should be at least 7 characters in my opinion. So with that, we can now close the brackets. So I can now save. I think the validations are now set properly. We have the email, which is required, the password, which is required. We have the main length, and then the validators.email. That is, if it's not an email, it's going to throw an error. So to display this error, we need to head straight to our HTML file in the register component. So within this register component, in the form, I'm going to call the form group. So I'm going to say form group, and then I'm going to call the name of the form, which we called, if I scroll up, we call it register form, right? So I'm just going to reference it right here. So our form group is able to track the form. And then next up, we need to display the error messages. But before we do that, within the input fields, we need to pass in the form control name, which we configured in the register component.ts file. So I'm going to say form control name is equals to email. I think this is the email field. So the same thing is going to be for the password. So I'm just going to grab the form control name, and then within the input field for the password, I'm going to say form control name, and then I'm going to set that to password. Because if you check this, we call the form builder groups email and then password. It has to be the same so that it gets access to each of the input field in our HTML file. So that's the first step. So the second step is below the input tag, I'm going to make use of the I tag, that is the italic tags in HTML, to display the error message. So I'm going to style it by giving it a style color of tomato. So I'm going to say color, and then the style is going to be called tomato, which is a form of red. And then we're going to make use of the ngif directory to display the error message. So within the I tag, I can just say ngif if register dot. I'm using GitHub Copilot for as a plugin on my project. That's why I'm getting so many suggestions. So I'm just gonna say ngif is equals to register form dot controls, and I'm gonna reference the email dot invalid. That is, if the register form is invalid, it's gonna display an error message. So ngif register form dot controls dot invalid. But we're not gonna stop here. We're gonna create another condition, that is, if the register form dot controls dot email is dirty, or the register form dot controls dot touched, then the error message should be displayed. What do I mean by this? It's anytime the user goes on the page and then they click on the input field, that is, they touch the form or they type something in between the form, the error message starts to get displayed. And the error message we want to display is email is required and must be valid. So the same configuration we need for our password as well. So I'm just going to copy that, and below the input tag, I'm going to paste that in, and we're just going to make some few changes. So the first change is we change all the emails to password. So this is going to be password because that's the name of our form control, and it's practically the same thing. If the form is invalid, if the form is touched, if the form is dirty, then display a certain error message. So for us in the password, we're going to say password must be at least 7 characters. So I'm gonna save everything we've done so far, and let's see if this works. And before that, we need to restart our compiler. Meanwhile, our npm package for Supabase has been installed. So I'm just gonna run ngserve and wait for the project to compile. And while the project is compiling, we can check the package.json file and we can see the Supabase version installed is version 2.22.0. So if you are following this project, this is the current version. In the future, a new version might have been created, so you need to take note of that. See, our project has finished compiling, so I'm gonna refresh the page just in case, and then I'm gonna type in an email address and see we configure the register component. So I'm just gonna say register. So we are in the register form, so I'm gonna start typing in an email. You can see the error message starts to show immediately we start typing in. It says email is required and must be valid. So I'm gonna say decode angle at Gmail. So immediately it sees that it's a right Gmail address, it takes away the error message. But if I start clearing the field, it says the email is required and must be valid. Same thing with the password. Once I click on the form or the form is dirty, that is, if I click outside of the form, it says password must be at least 7 characters. So I need to type in at least 7 characters to get rid of that error message. So we can just disable the button as long as the form is invalid. So in the button tag, I can just make use of the disabled attributes. So I just say disabled and then I call register form dot invalid. So if it's invalid, you can't submit anything within the form. So I'm gonna save that and let's just quickly test that out as well. So refresh the page. As you can see, you can't click on the form right now, it's disabled, except both fields are enabled. So if I say decode angle at gmail.com and then type in the required amount of passwords, the form is enabled, it's gonna submit. So I'm gonna head straight to the Visual Studio Code, and what I'm going to do next is to quickly copy and paste this configuration in our login component. So quickly in the login component, I'm going to grab everything inside of the constructor. In fact, everything from this register form, I'm going to grab it and then I'm going to copy it and paste it right here. So all I need to do is just to change the register form to login form and then import the right modules. So for instance, we need to import the form group right here. So before we do that, we need to grab the reactive forms module as well. So I'm just going to grab everything right here and then paste it in the login component.ts file, copy the register forms module, paste it in the import array. I think that's all we need to do since it's the same field. So we just need to do the same thing in the HTML. So I'm just going to save this and then open up the login component.html file as well as the register component HTML file. So I'm going to grab the configurations for the form group and then paste it inside of the form tag right here. So instead of register form, we have login form. And then for the error messages, the same thing applies. I'm gonna grab the I tag we have right here and I'm gonna copy that, head straight to the input tag we have right here. Just below it, gonna paste in the italics, change the register form to login form. And then within the input tag, we need to pass in the form control name and then pass in email. So the last one we need to copy is the I tag for the password warning. So I'm just gonna copy that as well, head straight to the login component and then below the input tag, I'm just gonna paste that in and as well as the form control name, and I'm gonna set that to password before we finally replace the register form to login form. So it's gonna be login form. So I'm gonna save and then we need to pass in the disabled attributes and I'm gonna say login form dot invalid. So if the login form does invalid, disable the button. So I'm gonna head straight to the login components and see if the warning works for the fields. So try to enter a wrong email address, try to enter a wrong password format, get the error message, except it's up to 7 and except we have at gmail.com. So cool. With this, we are done with the validations for the form And I think the last thing we need to do is just to create the functions for the auth service. That is the sign up and sign in functions, and then consume it in our login and register form. So quickly, I head straight to the service file. So I'm going to go to super.service.ts file. And the first thing we need to do is to create the variable for the Supabase client. We need to import this as well. So let me just create a private variable because we don't intend to use this variable outside of this component. So I'm just going to say Supabase underscore client and then call the Supabase client. We need to import this from at Supabase / Supabase dash JS. So the reason why we have this warning is because we've not used this particular variable. We need to use it so the error disappears. So within the constructor, I'm gonna reference the Supabase client. So I'm gonna say this dot Supabase underscore client is equals to create client, and then I'm gonna open a bracket, and then I'm gonna pass in two variables: the Supabase URL as well as the Supabase key. Those are the two things we imported from our Supabase dashboard. That is the URL and the key. It's needed in this service. So to do that, I'm just gonna say environment, which we need to import as well, .supabase.url as well as environment.supabase.key. So let's quickly import the environment, which we have in fact, but I think we didn't import it properly. It's supposed to be import environment from src /environment/environment dot development, because we have it in the dev environment. So it's supposed to be dot environment. We need to import the create client as well. So let me do that. For some reason, IntelliSense doesn't want me to do that, so I just copy that and then paste it within the Supabase import objects. So that's about that. So with that, we can now create this register and the login function. So the first function is going to be called register for us to register an account. So I'm just going to say sign up, and then it requires two fields, the email and the password. So I'm just going to say email, which is type of string, and then I'm going to return this dot supabase underscore client dot auth dot sign up, which is for the email and then the password. So this is the function to register a new account in Supabase, and then to log in, I'm just going to say sign in, and then it requires the email as well as the password as well. And then below that, we need to return this dot supabase dot auth dot, instead of sign in, we're gonna use sign in with password. So this is the method we're going to use to sign into our account once it's created. So these are the two functions we need to create for us to be authenticated into the dashboard of our application. So what we need to do next is just to consume these two sign in and sign up function in our register and login component. So quickly, let's head over to the TS files of this project. So the first one we're going to start up with is the register component.ts file. So obviously we need a submit function to do that. So let's create the submit function by saying public on submit, and then we open a bracket, and within this function I can just say this. Before I proceed, we need to inject the Angular service, that is the Supabase service right here. So within the constructor, I'm gonna say private auth, and then I think we called our service super service. So I need to import this super service in this particular file. As you can see right here, we've been able to import the super service from our service file. So all I need to do is just to say this dot auth dot sign up, which is what we call the method to sign up, that is register for a new user. So I'm going to open a parenthesis, and we need to register we need to reference the form. So to do that, I'm just going to say this dot register form dot email, which is the first field we need, and then we need the password as well. So I'm just going to say this dot register form dot password. Okay, we didn't pass in the value. It's supposed to be register form dot value dot email, and then register form dot value dot password. So that's all. So it returns a promise which we need to chain to using the dot then keyword. So I'm just gonna say dot then and then I'm gonna say res and then make use of the fat arrow. Let's first of all console log res, and then if there is an error, I can just catch the error making use of the catch keyword, passing the error, and then console log the error. So I'm gonna save this, and then within our HTML file, I'm gonna create the ng submit event handler. So I'm just gonna say ng submit is equals to the name of our function, which we called on submit, and with that the configuration for our submit function is complete. So I'm just gonna save everything we've done and then open up the browser, head straight to the register component. For this, I'm going to open up the console to test things out. And before I test this out, I'm going to open the Supabase dashboard, and under authentication, I'm going to click the sidebar for authentication. You can see it says no users in your project yet. We don't have any users yet. So I don't want to use my own email. So I want to use a test email address. So we can use a service for that, a fake email generator. So I can just use temp mail for that. So I'm just going to type in tempmail.org in the browser, and it's going to try to verify if we're not a robot or not. Once that is done, it's going to generate a temporary mail for us, which we're going to use to test out this service. So I'm going to copy this email address, head straight to the register form, and then paste in the email address, enter a password, and then click on register. So we get a response which contains an object, a data object, which says the role is authenticated, then the name of the email, which this means that our service is correct, but we need to confirm this particular user in our email, or else we will not be able to log in. For instance, if I refresh this dashboard, you can see it says waiting for verification. If we try to sign in, that is, if I head to the login form, which we have not integrated yet, so let me quickly do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this ng submit event handler, head to the login HTML components. So I'm going to paste it in the form. It's going to be called on submit as well. So I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to head back to the register component ts file, and I'm going to grab everything inside of this on submit function, and then make minimal changes in it in the login component ts file. So we can just paste it right below here. So the only thing that needs to change here is, instead of .sign up, we're gonna call this .auth. In fact, we won't get IntelliSense because we haven't imported service in the constructor. So quickly, I'm just gonna do that by saying private auth. So it's gonna be super service, right? So we need to import it. So when I say this .auth then we have the IntelliSense to choose between sign up and sign in. For this time around, we need sign in. So this .auth sign in, instead of register form, for this part we have login form. So change that to login form, the error disappears. That's all we need to do. Save everything, and then I can head back to the browser, and our compilation is successful. So if I try to log in with that same email address by heading to the login page, so if I paste in the email address and I'm typing the password, we'll get an error message because we haven't verified our user. You see, it says there's an error that says user is null, and then the session is null. The reason for this is it says email not confirmed. Ideally, you want to display this on the form, somewhere on the form, but for this tutorial, I'm not going to do that. You can always do that on your own. So to verify the email, to confirm the email, we need to head straight to temp mail, and then you can see the email we received. So we need to confirm our sign up. So quickly, once I click on the email, and then we can see the email details, and I click on confirm your email, the email gets confirmed, and then we'll be able to have access to the dashboard. If you sign in successfully, you get routed to the dashboard. We can do that very soon by routing the user to the dashboard if the login is successful. So to do that, I can just head straight to our submit function, and below the console.log res, I can just say if res.data.user.role is equals to authenticated, then we can just do this dot router, which we need to import as well. This dot router dot navigate, and then call the dashboard part, which is forward slash dashboard. That's what we need to do. So we need to import the router. So I'm just going to go above here, and within the import array, I can just say router module, which is important from the Angular router, and then we need to inject it in our constructor as well. So I just say private router and then call the router, which we need to import as well from Angular router. So that fixed the error for the router. So to get rid of this warning, we can just add an initializer to our user by making sure it's not null by default. We can just put in an initializer right there and it gets rid of the warning flag. So we're going to test this out in the login component to see if we can log in this time around. So I'm just going to copy this particular part of the code, edge to our login component.ts file. Oh, we're in the login.ts file, so that's good. So we can just test this out. But before we do, I want to head straight to the dashboard of the Supabase and let's refresh and see if our user has been authenticated. As you can see, we no longer have that warning message that we need to verify our user. It shows the last sign-in date, the created date, the provider, which is email, as well as the UI ID. So let's try to log in once more. I'm going to paste in that email address and then enter the password and then click on login. As you can see, we get navigated to our dashboard, which is beautiful. So with this, we're able to create authentication making use of Angular 16 as well as Supabase. So you can add more features to this application by adding the auth guards in Angular, like the can activate guards, to determine when the user is logged in or not. But for this video, I won't do that. I'll do that in later videos. So I think that's all for this video. One more thing I would like to show us about Supabase is it automatically sets the user object in the local storage. So once I click on application, I check local storage, you can see it contains configurations for the access token, the expiration, the refresh token, the token type. All this you can use to configure the authentication for your app and the authorization for your app however you want. So it's a really beautiful service, and I hope to create more tutorials on Supabase in the future using Angular, using React, and other front-end frameworks. But for today, I think this is where I stop. If you have any questions, do drop it in the comment section below and I'll be sure to answer. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.